Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you're having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. This all went down about 8 months ago, but I just recently heard how far my payback went. I was a Navy enlisted service member and had been stationed in Yokosuka, Japan for a few years before getting transferred back stateside. I worked at the main hospital that took care of service members and their families. It's a small place, so everyone knows everyone else's business. Not long after I left, word got around about this new doctor officer working in radiology. My buddies kept telling me how awful he was to work with, but that wasn't anything new. Then one day, someone spotted him printing out a letter. He left it on his desk, and my friend snapped a picture and sent it to me. Turns out this guy was asking to move from enlisted housing to officer quarters. For those who don't know, military housing is available if you're married, have a family, or qualify based on your rank and the base you're at. Usually officer housing is way nicer than enlisted, but in Yokosuka it's pretty much all the same because it's overseas. Most of the housing is in apartments, and each complex is called a tower, like Fuji Tower. There are 9 towers total, and 2 are for officers, since there are way more enlisted folks than officers. Here's the thing about military life. Stuff happens. When you get stationed somewhere, it's on you to apply for housing on or off base before you arrive, depending on what's allowed. If space is tight and you don't apply in time, you get put wherever there's room. So this new officer, let's call him Dr. Smith, ended up in an enlisted tower. Keep in mind, enlisted members have families too, and other officers have lived in enlisted housing before without making a fuss. Now, get a load of some of the stuff Dr. Smith wrote in his letter, and yeah, this guy has a PhD. I have numerous valid objections to residing in a building predominantly occupied by enlisted personnel, particularly lower-ranking enlisted, given my status as an officer. Enlisted housing is known for high rates of crime, violent incidents, substance abuse, and alcoholism. Sexual assaults and other deviant behaviors are also prevalent. I have an attractive family, a wife and 2 daughters aged 3 and 4. They are prime targets for the deviant activities common among enlisted personnel. My family deserves the safety of officer housing, where such incidents are exceptionally rare. Other officer families will be reluctant to visit us due to our current living situation in enlisted quarters. It's crucial for my children to form friendships with other officers' children. My wife needs to socialize with other officers' wives, and I need to establish connections with fellow officers. Compelling an officer to reside in a large apartment complex predominantly inhabited by enlisted personnel is unethical. You get the picture. This guy basically looked down on all enlisted service members, assuming every single one of us was a drug user, pervert, criminal, or worse. The kicker? He used to be an enlisted army guy before going to officer school. To put it in civilian terms, imagine a manager who discriminates against all his employees, calling them criminals, violent drunks, perverts, and drug addicts just because of their job titles. Forgetting that some have families and, might not be any of those things. And he doesn't just have the power to mess up your work life, he can wreck your personal life too. Deny time off, make you work late, write you up if he doesn't like you, and block your promotions. Needless to say, everyone was furious. I was getting ready to leave the service anyway, so I figured I'd have some fun before I got out. I set up a fake Facebook account and posted the letter along with Dr. Smith's picture on a popular military enlisted group page. Within 48 hours, it was everywhere. But I wasn't done yet. The military has these things called challenge coins. Think of them like trading cards, but they're custom coins that come in all shapes and sizes. I designed one with Dr. Smith's face on one side and a big middle finger on the other. I also made stickers to show how proud us deviants were. Other people came up with their own coin designs too, but I think mine was the most popular. I sold over 70 coins at a huge discount to the person who originally sent me the picture so she could sell them for a profit. Soon, Dr. Smith's face was everywhere because most people keep their coins displayed on their desks. No matter where he went at work, he'd see his face on someone's desk. And since it didn't have his name on the coin, you couldn't officially say it was him. I sold more stateside and some even made it to Europe. I made about $3,000 overall, which was a nice bonus. The story even got featured in the online naval newspaper and on 2 popular YouTube channels, and if you're in the military, you know the brass only care when something's too big to sweep under the rug. The story got Dr. Smith sent up to captain's mast, which is like Navy court. During the hearing, Dr. Smith tried to claim his wife wrote the letter. "It wasn't me, sir," he stammered. "My wife gets worked up about these things sometimes." The captain just stared at him. "Dr. Smith, are you seriously throwing your wife under the bus for this?" Dr. Smith's wife even tried to take the fall, but no one was buying it. "With all due respect, ma'am," the captain said, "your writing style is, let's say, less sophisticated than what we see in this letter. They both ended up deleting all their social media accounts. As a result, Dr. Smith got hit with 3 UCMJ articles, which are basically his offenses. But wait, there's more. In the military, you have a deadline for how long you can be at a certain rank. If you don't get promoted, you're out. Because Dr. Smith was new and got slapped with those UCMJ articles, he wasn't eligible for promotion and got involuntarily separated. Also, the officer program he went through paid for his PhD when the military. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd be caught up in a real estate nightmare, but here I am. It all started when I inherited a nice piece of land from my grandfather. It was about 5 acres of mostly undeveloped property on the outskirts of town, bordering a new suburban development. I had plans to maybe build a house there someday, but for now I was content to let it sit as a nature preserve of sorts. Everything was fine for the first year or so. I'd visit the property occasionally to check on things, clear some brush, that kind of stuff. But then, one day I drove out there and got the shock of my life. There were 2 brand new houses sitting right in the middle of my land. I couldn't believe my eyes. I parked my truck and walked up to the houses in a daze. They looked like they'd just been finished. Cookie-cutter suburban homes with manicured lawns and everything. A woman was outside one of them watering some flowers. "Excuse me," I said, trying to stay calm. "I'm Name. I own this property. Can you tell me what's going on here?" The woman looked confused. "What do you mean you own the property? We bought this house from the homeowner association 3 months ago." My head was spinning. "I'm sorry, but there must be some mistake. I inherited this land from my grandfather. I have the deed and everything. No one had permission to build here." She was getting visibly upset now. "Look, I don't know what kind of scam you're trying to pull, but we bought this house fair and square. You need to leave before I call the police." I put my hands up. "I'm not trying to scam anyone. I'm just as confused as you are. Can you tell me who specifically you bought the house from?" "Karen Johnson, the homeowner association president," she said. "Now please leave." I nodded and walked away, my mind racing. I knew I needed to get to the bottom of this fast. As soon as I got home, I called up my lawyer friend Mark and explained the situation. He was as baffled as I was. "This is completely illegal," he said. "They had no right to build on your land, let alone sell it. We need to get the police involved right away." So that's what we did. I filed a police report, and Mark helped me start putting together a lawsuit against the homeowner association and this Karen Johnson woman. But it wasn't going to be easy. We were up against people with deep pockets who clearly didn't care about breaking the law. Over the next few weeks, I learned more disturbing details. Apparently, Karen had convinced the homeowner association board that my land was abandoned property that they had the right to develop. She forged documents saying they had acquired the land and then sold off parcels to a developer and 2 families. The whole thing was a massive fraud, but Karen and her cronies had covered their tracks well. They had a paper trail of fake deeds and permits that on the surface made everything look legitimate. It was going to be an uphill battle to prove what really happened. I felt terrible for the families who had unknowingly bought houses on my land. They were innocent victims in all this. But I also couldn't just let it go. This was my property that had been stolen from me. Things came to a head about a month later. I was at home one evening when there was an angry pounding on my front door. I opened it to find Karen herself standing there, red-faced and livid. "How dare you try to steal those poor families' homes?" she shouted. "I'm going to make sure you rot in jail for this." I tried to stay calm. "Ma'am, you're the one who's going to jail. You sold land that wasn't yours to sell. That's fraud." She jabbed a finger in my chest. "Listen here, you little twerp. I run things around here. No snot-nosed kid is going to tell me what I can and can't do with my neighborhood. Back off now or you'll regret it." I stood my ground. "This isn't your neighborhood. That land belongs to me and you had no right to sell it. Now please leave before I call the police." Karen's face twisted into an ugly sneer. "Oh, you want to play hardball? Fine. I've got friends in high places. You have no idea who you're messing with. I'll bury you in so many lawsuits you'll be bankrupt before you can blink." With that, she stormed off. I had a sinking feeling in my stomach. I knew she wasn't bluffing about her connections. This was about to get very messy. Sure enough, within days I was served with a stack of lawsuits. Karen and the homeowner association were suing me for defamation, harassment, trespassing, you name it. They threw everything they could think of at me, hoping something would stick. I was overwhelmed and scared. Even with Mark's help, I didn't know how I was going to fight this. Karen had the money and resources to drag this out forever. I was just a regular guy trying to protect what was rightfully mine. But then we caught a lucky break. One of Karen's homeowner association board members, a guy named Tom, reached out to me secretly. He said he couldn't live with the guilt anymore and wanted to come clean about what really happened. Tom gave us a sworn statement detailing how Karen had masterminded the whole scheme. He provided copies of emails and documents showing how she forged deeds, bribed officials, and bullied the rest of the board into going along with it. It was the smoking gun we needed. Armed with this new evidence, we took everything to the district attorney. They launched a full criminal investigation into Karen and the homeowner association. Meanwhile, my counter-lawsuit against them started gaining serious traction in civil court. Karen must have realized the walls were closing in because she tried one last desperate move. She showed up at my house again late one night, this time with an envelope full of cash. $100,000, she said, thrusting it at me. That's more than that worthless land was ever worth. Take it and drop all this nonsense. I refused. It's not about the money, it's about what's right. You can't just take whatever you want because you think you're above the law. She narrowed her eyes. You're making a big mistake, kid. I've ruined people for less. This is your last chance. Goodbye, Karen, I said, closing the door in her face. As soon as she was gone, I called the police to report the attempted bribe. It was one more nail in her coffin. The next few months were a whirlwind of court hearings, depositions, and legal wrangling. But in the end, justice prevailed. Karen was convicted on multiple felony counts of fraud, forgery, and corruption. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison and ordered to pay over $1 million in fines and restitution. The homeowner association was dissolved, and several other board members faced charges as well. The developer who built the houses was also held liable for failing to do their due diligence on the property. As for me, I got my land back, but I felt awful for the families who had bought the homes not knowing they were on stolen property. So I worked out a deal with them. They could stay in the houses and I'd sell them the land for a fair price. It was the right thing to do. In the end, Karen's greed and arrogance cost her everything. She thought she was untouchable, but she learned the hard way that no one is above the law. I was just glad to have my grandfather's legacy protected and to see real justice done. It was a long, stressful ordeal that I never want to go through again. But I learned some valuable lessons about standing up for what's right, even when the odds seem stacked against you. And I gained a new appreciation for how important it is to know your rights as a property owner and to always do your homework before making any real estate deals. These days, things are pretty quiet around the old family land. I've become good friends with my new neighbors in the two houses. We even get together for barbecues sometimes and laugh about how crazy it all was. It just goes to show that even the worst situations can have a happy ending if you persevere and do the right thing. The next one is a petty revenge story. First time posting and I'm on mobile. So here's my story. I, 53F, am a disabled vet and use a variety of mobility aids to get around. I also get almost all my healthcare and meds from the local VA hospital. This last Monday, I realized that I was out of some meds and hadn't received the refills yet, so I ran to the VA hospital pharmacy to get enough to tie me over. Since my local VA hospital is absolutely huge, I always use my mobility scooter because there's absolutely no way I can physically navigate the parking lot, as well as the labyrinth that the inside consists of. After I completed my transactions and checked in with a couple of my health providers, I scooted myself out the doors with the intention of loading up my scooter in my vehicle and get the heck out of Dodge. Now, with this being a Monday, everyone and their dog is trying to find parking to get into the building, so there are cars driving around looking for opening spots to park. As I'm heading past vehicles, one pulls slightly in front of me to block my ability to continue to move forward, and this Karen rolls down her window and yells at me for trying to cut in line. She was there first, yada yada. Guy in the car next to me is just staring at her with this absolute WTF expression, about to get out of his vehicle to help me confront Karen. I shake my head and back my scooter up to go a different way to get to my vehicle. She passes me as I reach my truck, and realizes that I'm loading up the scooter so I can leave. Well, she decides she's going to take my spot. Not today, Karen. I nod at the guy who wanted to help me, hop in my truck, and back out of the parking space in a way that blocks Karen and gives easy access to the other guy. I did make sure to use all 5 fingers when I smiled and waved at her as I drove away. The next one is a malicious compliance story. About 2.5 years ago, my apartment was broken into during a camping trip. Some things were stolen, including multiple firearms. A year and a half ago, one of my firearms was found with some kids selling crack in a small city right over the border of the next state. The plea deals fell through, and the girl the cops had initially mentioned was going to trial. I receive a letter in the mail telling me of the court date and location, but it is explicitly not a summons. Whatever. I want my gun back sooner than later, so I go. Both the prosecutor and the assistant prosecutor are out sick, one with COVID. They make us hang around for a while for no reason, and eventually I just leave. They didn't like that, but whatever. Being there was legally voluntary. I tell them they can mail me the new date, and I'll deal with it then. 3 weeks go by, and here we are this morning. I get home from work and I check my mail. There are 2 letters, one for the first girl and another's for a guy I know just as an accomplice from the updates about the girl. His trial is today and hers is tomorrow. I go to the courthouse 40 minutes away and let them know I'm here. Everything is fine. They bring in the jury pool and spend 2 hours getting down to 7 jurors. The trial starts and we're just patiently waiting, 4 cops and 1 other civilian victim witness. They tell us no worries, this will be super quick. They basically just need to ask if it's the firearm I reported stolen and I'll be on my way. They call in all the cops who are getting paid this whole time first. It's now 1 p.m. I've been up for 24 hours, on 3 hours of sleep the day before, after working a 12-plus hour overnight shift. My entire body is cramping, I'm super uncomfortable, I'm exhausted. I last ate at 10 p.m. The assistant district attorney comes out and tells us they're taking an hour lunch break. I tell her I can't stay and I need to leave. She tells me I'm not allowed to. I already presented as a witness to the judge. I'd been summoned. I hadn't. They can charge me with this or that. One of the cops tells me they could detain me. The judge could order me, after I point out I haven't been summoned. And again, this is voluntary. Basically, they try and strong-arm me when all I want to do is go home. I point out that this guy isn't even who I was told was found with my gun. The assistant DA starts explaining how, oh no, he totally was. I don't know who you heard that from. My local PD mentioned the girl by name originally, giving me all these details about the case. Then re-emphasizing, I really must stay, or I'll be charged with a crime. Don't worry though, we'll get you in right away so you can leave soon, soon being in more than an hour minimum. Here's the thing, the judge issued a sequester order first thing in the morning before jury selection. I say fine and wait. Here comes the single greatest act of malicious compliance I've ever committed in my life. All the attorneys come in, all the jury comes in. The judge makes me swear to tell the truth. I do. As soon as I finish, I blurt out the prosecutor broke the sequester and was telling me about the case during the break. Stop. Everyone, except the lawyers out, including me. Eventually, they bring just me back in. The judge again makes me swear to tell the truth, confirms I understand what's happening, tells me the importance of a fair trial, maybe don't witness tamper then, and explains that witnesses are never to volunteer information and are to only answer the questions. You've been summoned, and it's a legal obligation. I let him finish and mention that I have never been summoned. He says, then I'm ordering you, understood? Yes, everyone comes back in. We all take our oaths again. The prosecutor that was threatening me starts asking questions. Here's the thing. I swore to tell the truth. I never agreed to tell it in a way that makes her life easier. She asked me some basic questions, name, age, what I do for work, etc. Then she gets into the actual questions. Do I own weapons? Did I report any stolen around this date? Did I own one of this model? Did I report this model stolen, etc.? Is this your gun? It certainly looks like it. Did the XX police contact you when it was recovered? No. Who did? YI Police Department, my local PD. Did they give you any details regarding how it was recovered? They said it was allegedly used in a crime by girls named Defense Objects, and the judge strikes that from testimony. By now, the DA is realizing that she's giving me too much leeway and starts asking for yes or no answers, eventually asks if I'd recognize the serial number if I saw it. I tell her no, and that roughly sums up my questions from her. Then it's the defendant's turn, and it goes exactly as you would expect by now. I answer truthfully, but in favorable wording. You said it looks like your gun, but you can't confirm? I'd need to compare the serial number against the police report or the gun shop, which still has it on record. Do you know who stole your firearm? No. Do you recognize Zzz? No. She asked a few more plausible deniability questions, and then I was free to go. I can't wait to be back tomorrow for the girl's trial. I'll probably be much less malicious, but I know the DA will be nervous when she sees me. Court is officially over, so the sequester order is no longer in effect. Good times, and don't worry. If I botched her case in this regard, that kid had more than enough charges. He should have taken the plea deal. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already.